I am delighted to welcome you today to this really exciting meeting about the future of the acquisition workforce. This meeting is designed for you. And so for any of you that have camera capabilities today at your offices, we encourage you to turn them on so it can be more of a virtual meeting style, virtual brown bag. Karen's even said, go ahead and eat some lunch if you're eating today. So again, feel free to turn on your cameras if you have them. We're going to go ahead and get started. I just wanted to first tell you a little bit about GW Law before I kick it off and introduce the co-hosts of today's event. GW Law School created the academic study of government procurement law in 1960, and we've been training lawyers since that time and have become the leading government procurement law program in the world. In recent years, we have launched degrees for non-attorneys, specifically acquisition professionals who understand that they can get a competitive advantage and advance their knowledge through government procurement law through their studies. So we have both degrees for attorneys and non-attorneys, specifically acquisition professionals. I want to credit one of your co-hosts today, Karen Thornton, who I'm about to introduce momentarily, with creating and launching the MSL degree program for non-attorneys, focusing on government procurement and cybersecurity law at the law school several years ago. So kudos to Karen, who's leading it, because as you can tell, she's very passionate about educating the acquisition workforce through many examples, and I'm sure she's going to tell you a little bit more about that today. So with that, I want to introduce the leaders of today's discussion. First, as already noted, Karen Thornton is a research fellow with the Acquisition Innovation Research Center, where she is part of the leadership team implementing the Defense Civilian Training Corps pilot. She previously served as counsel on the staff of the Committee of Armed Services for the U.S. House of Representatives, where she was responsible for legislation and oversight related to acquisition policy. She is a proud alumna of GW Law, where she earned an LLM in government procurement law and served as the director of the government procurement law program at GW, my direct predecessor, as well as on the legal writing faculty. She's still in fact, a part of our faculty today, teaching legal writing to acquisition professionals. She began her legal career as an Army JAG and procurement attorney with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and funded her college education with an Army ROTC scholarship. Today's meeting will be co-led by Ben McMartin, who is a managing partner of Public Spend Forum. Based on his bio online, I get the sense he knows a little something about other transaction authority, and maybe can touch upon that today, but is a leading expert in government procurement law and OTs. He previously served as chief of the Acquisition Management Office for the U.S. Army Combat Capabilities Development Command Ground Vehicle Systems Center, that is a mouthful, and prior to that as procuring, contracting, and agreements officer for the U.S. Army Contracting Command, Warren. All right, you have their backgrounds, and so with that, I am going to turn it over to my colleagues, Karen and Ben, to kick off this meeting. And one last plea, if you could turn on your cameras, please do so.
Thank you, Jessica. Thanks so much, everyone. This, to me, is really what makes GW so special, that we can get together and have a really important, I think, groundbreaking conversation about an issue that each one of you really can make a difference on. So Ben and I are really excited to hear your perspectives today, and specifically hear ideas from you that will help us in the efforts that we have underway. And I want to thank Ben for joining me. Ben is someone whom I first got to know when I was the program director, because one of the things that I was trying to do was help our students become more entrepreneurial thinkers, focusing on solving big, hard problems. And that is something that Ben embodies, and he has never backed down from challenges. And now in this phase in his career, he's really inspiring and educating others to become change agents. So he was the perfect person for me to think about, to bring to this conversation today. And one plug before I start my conversation with Ben. He's appearing on the big stage at NCMA. He's all over Twitter with the acquisition hackathon. And if anyone's headed to Nashville next month, I'll be there, and it's going to be a great show. Ben really commands a stage and has a lot of great content to share in an exciting way. So, Ben, is there anything you want to say before we start our conversation? I just, again, I want to say thank you. You're so busy, and it's great to have this chance to chat with you and share you with the GW community.
I'm looking forward to hearing everyone's comments and really talking through this. The piece that caught me in your opening remarks was phase of career. And that's something really important when it comes to the field of government contracting. I started in commercial litigation, of all terrible professions, and learned that I hated the courtroom, and I hated to go to motion days, and I hated conducting trials, all of which I did. But I found out early in my legal career, I did not enjoy those things. And then I found my way into government contracting, and not as an attorney. I had never been an attorney for the federal government. I was a contracting officer and then an acquisition manager, which is basically a program manager for a lab. And I found out that that's what I loved, and that's what I love to do. But then I found out, hey, you know what? I love teaching as well. And then next thing you know, I'm not working for the government anymore. I'm doing education on the outside, and I fully intend to be back in government at some point. I think there are multiple phases to a career, and I expect to be between industry and government and academia multiple times in my life until I'm dead. And so I'm looking forward to just talking and hearing other people's comments on this thing that we call acquisition.
Awesome. Beautiful. So I know you are considered an expert in a lot of different things, Ben, especially, you lecture far and wide on OTs, but something not everyone may know about you is that you also are an expert in organizational management and navigating organizations through organizational change. And when I spent my 2.5 years on the Hill as the acquisition policy person on the majority staff, there are lots of people who come to the staff and say, we want to do this new acquisition reform idea, or, hey, what if we try this? And generally speaking, the answer is, we have done decades of acquisition reform and swung all the way back and forth on the pendulum. And my response was, it wasn't my response. There was a lot of also recognition that it's a cultural issue. It's not that we need a new pathway necessarily, but that we have authorities that are underutilized, and culturally we have not empowered or educated our workforce to embrace them. So from someone who is an expert on organizational change, what's your definition of culture? Because that word would come up a lot, and I was never really confident that we were all talking about the same thing.
So when I look at the culture of an organization, or I go to a new organization, or I'm working within new leadership in my organization, when I look at culture, it's the way people interact in relation to either leadership, the vision of the organization, or both. Because sometimes the leadership doesn't align with the vision, sometimes it does. Sometimes leadership drives a vision, sometimes it reacts to a vision. And the reason for that is because, especially in DoD or in startups, for example, anywhere where you have leaders who set a vision and they move in and out frequently, then you're always going to have a lag between what the culture of the organization is and what the new thing is. And then the second piece of that, the more granular piece of that, is really, when I think of culture, I think of vision, I think of communication, and I think of trust. These are all mushy things that that we don't spend a lot of time talking about because we have to get the job done. So we don't think about vision. You know, vision is this beautiful, pretty statement that somebody goes and develops for a long time. And then the rest of us that are working are like, what is that person doing? Get their butt out here and do some work, and they're creating the vision. And then there's this communication piece, which sounds like a no-brainer. Any leadership class you've gone to will talk about communication, the importance of communication and trust. And that all sounds really mushy. Unfortunately, is the most important part of culture is communication, trust, and vision. And then within trust, you have honesty and integrity. And the most critical element of them all, consistency. Culture takes a long time to grow. You have to do the same thing until people assume you will do that thing, and they have to buy into that and want to do it. And so when I think of reform efforts, and especially I think of the reform efforts in acquisition in the last, I'll say 7 years. So let's start at the end of 2015 and let's go to today. All right. Every year Congress was giving us new authorities in the acquisition community. Hey, acquisition community, here's 40 new authorities this year. Go kick some butt for us. Go change the way acquisition is done. Next year, hey, here's 40 more things. We know you hadn't touched those other 40, but here's 40 more. Go out there and change the world and make acquisition a better place. Those reforms are coming out and they're being laid on top of a culture that started 30 years ago, and it has been very consistent. And it's a very consistent culture of, we're going to maintain compliance, and we're going to prioritize who the most important customer is, and we're going to work to that customer. And the most important customer for a long time has been Congress. And so the taxpayer is the most important customer. So what are we going to do? Are we going to take the risk on a new type of acquisition approach? Yes, we will, as soon as we check all the boxes that we've always checked. Oh, we ran out of time. I guess we won't do that risk-taking thing this time. And so when I think of acquisition culture, I think of what is tried and true, what is consistent, what can I trust? And the one thing I can always trust is that there are rules, and I must follow those rules. And as long as I follow those rules, I won't get in trouble. There's a saying in industry, I don't know if people say this on the government side, but no one ever got fired for hiring McKinsey. I don't know if you guys have ever heard that, but no one ever got fired for hiring McKinsey. All right. Why? They're super expensive. They're super well known. They're a high-class consulting firm. If you just hire them over and over again, you might not do anything new, but you will never get fired for hiring McKinsey. You can't make a bad choice with a McKinsey. Of course, that translates to Boston Consultant, Booz Allen, whoever the company is. It's not the McKinsey that's important in that saying. It's the fact that if you're consistent, you do what people consider successful, then you're always going to be successful. And so when I come into a culture, that's what I'm looking for. What's the vision? Do the people in the organization map to the vision? Does the leadership match to the vision? How long has the leadership been around? And when are they moving back out? Well, one last point I'll say on this is acquisition is unique in that you can have different visions for an organization that seemingly should have the same type of vision. And here's an example. So I was an acquisition manager for a lab, right? That big long acronym that Jessica was just talking about, that unbelievably long acronym, the world's longest acronym, that was an engineering, it was an RDEC, right? Research Development and Engineering Center. The mission of a research and engineering center is to do research and engineering for some kind of system that eventually is going to be integrated by a program management office or a program executive office. And so the missions would probably all be about the same, right? The vision certainly would be, hey, we're going to engineer awesome stuff and we're going to give it to the program management office, and then they're going to do their thing and they're going to field it, right? That would be everyone's vision. But you can have different visions at a lab. My vision could be, we're going to do the coolest research in the world, and everybody's going to recognize us for being the awesomest in ground vehicle research. That could be my vision. That vision doesn't mean I ever translate anything to my customers. It just means I'm super awesome at research. Or my vision could be, we're going to provide the highest quality engineering services to the program management office. Maybe I never do anything groundbreaking ever. All I do is pump out great engineering work. Or maybe my mission is, my engineers are never going to do anything related to engineering. All they're going to do is pump out the most amazing acquisition documents you've ever seen, which is the mission of most research development and engineering centers, because they pump out amazing acquisition documents and they don't do a whole lot of science, technology, research, and development.
So the work that I'm trying to do now, and that I know you also have on your plate, is to help develop the future of the acquisition workforce. What does it look like to modernize the folks who do this important work? And I think that's going to have to come with a certain amount of culture change or shift just naturally, as we have a lot of our senior officials prepared to retire, and now an influx of a new generation. So when you advise on organizational culture change, does it more come from the top down or from the bottom up? Or is there a way for those of us on the call who, I think many of us find ourselves in the middle, how do we all collaboratively force and sustain cultural change?
Yeah, I think the middle, and I know the middle gets slapped around. How many middle managers do we have on this call? Quite a bit. Oh man, the middle gets beat up, don't they? Oh, middle gets slapped around. Senior leaders, we're setting the vision, right? Journeymen, we're getting the work done. Middle managers, we're wasting time and we're a block to everybody, right? Middle managers get hammered on. But middle management is a great place to steer the organization from probably the most powerful point of, I've been a journeyman. I very recently did the job. And now I have a team of people who did the job and I can steer. Remember, those senior leaders, one of the advantages to turnover is those senior leaders are gone pretty soon, right? Program managers is 3 years. Program manager, that's 3 years. If you're a year and a half in, they're already planning the next job. So middle management, that's your continuity. And you're going to be able to steer from the middle. When it comes to modernization, innovation, really, if you have strong middle management, you will drive innovation from the middle. I will call it bottom up innovation, because ultimately what you're providing is that top cover for the journeymen that are ultimately going to bring some new ideas. But middle management brings new ideas too. The trick in middle management is, you know how to get to the next level. You know what you did to get to the level you're at. You know how to get to the next level. Innovation isn't necessarily the quickest path to the top. But ultimately, you can foster that innovation in your organization by being consistent in what your goals are. I mentioned earlier, I know this is kind of snarky, but I mentioned how engineers, really, the engineers I know who have grown to the top of engineering, they don't really do any engineering. They manage programs, they manage a lot of contracts, they write a lot of acquisition paperwork. So when they were in engineering school, I'm sure they weren't thinking to themselves, I'm going to write quality assurance surveillance plans and monitor contractors for the rest of my life. That's my big dream. That's why I'm here in this sweet engineering school, or I'm doing this cool robotics program, is so that I can write scopes of work for the rest of my life. And so when I came in as an acquisition manager for the lab, my first thing that I did was said, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to establish an organization that's going to be called a procurement cell. We are not going to be warranted contracting folks. We don't sit over in the contracting center. But what we're going to do is we're going to write the most amazing contract requirements packages that you've ever seen. And we're going to get all those engineers and scientists back into the lab. And so that was my vision. Hey, if I see an engineer writing paperwork, that's my job. I want them in the lab doing some real work. The paperwork is us. That's what we're great at. I mean, we write great scopes. We know what all the paperwork is supposed to look like, and we're going to take over that. I'll tell you what, I didn't get a lot of love from contracting when I came up with this idea, all right? Because the first thing they said is, you know, what were the things they said? That's my job. That's the first thing that they said. That's my job. Second thing they said, there's no need for you. Engineers can do that. You guys are just an added cog, not needed, right? The engineers can do that. And then of course they were worried that maybe we would create great packages, and then that would put pressure on contracting to move faster, right? Because the strain between contracting is always move faster, contracting, you're too slow. And then what's the retort to that? Give us good requirements and we'll move faster, right? That's the back and forth between those organizations. And who do both of them hate? Legal, right? Oh, legal. It's not my fault. It's all legal. They're jacking us up, right? So ultimately, I don't think there's a ton of secret sauce on how you do this to make it great. You take the people that you have and what they're good at and what they want to do, and you find a way for them to do that. And so by finding an opportunity for engineers to be the engineers, they started to like being CORs once in a while, right? Contracting officer representative, because they were doing a lot of the work and they wanted to see what was going on the contractor side. And we saw that go. Our contracting folks got better packages. They were happy, right? Legal's happy because everybody's doing better work. And so legal's always happy. By the way, what's the bane of being a government attorney is that, are you doing amazing legal work or are you an editor, right? You go from, oh, I'm doing this amazing legal work. I'm in law school and I'm learning about constitutional law and this is super cool, right? And then next thing you know, you're like, this is my 40th J&A I'm reviewing. They've cut and paste the same language every time. I told them it's no good and they keep cutting and pasting it. So you get in this repetition where you're not enjoying the type of stuff you're doing, and it's hurtful for the culture, right? So when I think of like how to innovate from the middle, I do think it goes from the middle. I think the middle has to drive. I think senior leaders are trying to establish a vision, and that vision is going to change pretty soon. But ultimately, you have to empower the people below you, and you have to empower the people across from you. And that always seems weird, right? Hey, I need to make the attorney's life easier. I need to make that engineer's life easier, and I need to make this contracting officer's life easier. And if I do that, then my job is going to be amazing and easier. So I've seen that work. Is it easy? Heck no, none of this is easy. But I think that is the approach. The idea that a leader comes in and sets some amazing vision, and all of a sudden everyone goes, we did it, right? Maybe one time in the history. What was the one time that happened in the history of the United States? The space race is the only time anyone will say that happened, right? And so you get Sputnik, and then you get the president's direction and all the way down, and they're like, we're going to go to the moon. And everyone's like, oh, that's super cool. I want to go to the moon. And then boom, people are doing amazing stuff.
Boom. All right. There's a lot of chat. I think you're resonating with a lot of folks, which of course I realized you would, because these are my people, right? I've been classmates with these folks. I've been in the classroom space with these folks, and whether they're lawyers in the acquisition field or acquisition professionals, contracting representatives, contracting officers, I have yet to find someone who telling me like how they got to GW or how they started their career, for anyone to say anything other than, I just kind of fell into it. And they always follow that with, I fell into it and found my people and I love it. But what would happen if we actually showed people a way and developed their educational foundations to get them to where they're going? There was a lot of talk on the Hill when I was there about STEM talent, STEM, and we are falling behind our near peer adversaries, and we need to educate a STEM talent pipeline. My thinking is, if we don't have the acquisition workforce colleagues to the STEM folks equally well educated, equally confident in their ability to communicate and collaborate across disciplines, a STEM pipeline gets us nowhere. What's your reaction to my conviction on that?
So I will say that the STEM talent's already there. The question is, what do you do with your talent as an organization? So DoD's got tons of STEM talent. When we talk about STEM talent, people usually disregard, I don't know, DARPA or ARPA-E or now ARPA-H or Navy Research, AFRL. They look at these groups and they go, oh yeah, but you've been around for a while. We're looking for STEM talent, right? We're not looking for this group with the most amazing labs in the world doing some of the craziest science ever. We're looking for something else because we have problems here and we're going to blame you for the problems and we're going to look elsewhere, right? And so then they look to STEM development. By the way, everything you see in commercial industry, right, has some kind of a government tie back to it, in which some person who wasn't considered STEM enough has developed something amazing and now it is a commercial product. We always hear the internet, DARPA, that's like the kind of the go-to. That's not my go-to. My go-to is Gatorade, right? Gatorade was developed in a cooperative agreement at the University of Florida to aid the Gators. It was originally GATOR-AID, Gatorade, right? And it was an experiment to say, hey, can we do this electrolyte beverage and then we can use it to bring hydration back to athletes. And then of course it was bought out, and now National Institutes of Health gets a nice check every year as a royalty from Gatorade that they funded, God, 30 years ago. So when I think about STEM talent, I don't think that the government needs STEM. The government's got STEM talent. Do they need to keep up with the new technologies? Of course. Every company, every government, everybody in the world, every student has to keep up with whatever the latest technology is. Do we need to attract more STEM people? Of course, we need to attract more STEM people, but we better have something to do with them when they show up. And we better have a way to integrate them, and we better have a way to know what to do with them when they show up. Other, they will not be here very long in government. And when it comes to the acquisition system, I think that is a very frustrating thing. When you bring in a STEM talent, let's say engineer, scientists, and you bring them in and you say, okay, here's your job. You're this expert in AI. You wrote these great papers in college. And now what we're going to do is we're going to write contracts and you're going to write scopes for me. You're going to go to a conference once in a while. Are you going to patent anything? Well, our patent system and our tech transfer system is not that great. We don't really invest in it that much and we don't know it that well. Maybe you'll patent some things while you're here. Maybe you won't. Ultimately, great scientists and engineers across the federal government, not DoD, the federal government, you will find them at labs who have great tech transfer programs in which they can patent things. So go find a great tech transfer program and you will find the best STEM engineering that you find in DoD or the federal government. All right, so what do you do about acquisition though, right? Okay, so we think we need STEM people. I am an advisor in one of my roles to a group called the DoD CDAO, or Chief Digital and AI Office. And I find plenty of folks that think we need to slap some AI on it. All right, so that's the answer to everything right now. 7 years ago, before I left the government, you were going to slap some cyber on it. And if you slap cyber on it, then money fell from the sky, right? Well, nowadays, cyber's not good enough. You have to slap some AI on it. The critical gap that we need to be solving for here is not STEM, right? We can get STEM folks, but we have to have something to do for them. We have to have applications. And so the most important people in the world right now are product folks and entrepreneurs and critical thinkers and folks who can say, this is my job. Someone's telling me to slap some AI on it. I don't know what that means, but what can AI do? What does my job do? And how can those integrate? And what are the rules and regulations that would be a challenge for me, not a roadblock, but a challenge for me in ultimately ingesting some new technology and applying it to my job. Are these easy things? No, but that's what they're fun. Ultimately, you can come in and say, hey, I'm going to try something new. I'm going to try robotic automation, or I'm going to try some AI application to the type of job that I'm interested. And I believe I saw Liz Tarico on here. I'm going to look again. Yes, I see Liz Tarico on here.
I'm
All
on
right.
here.
And Liz is no stranger to this idea of take a concept like robotic process automation or data analytics and ultimately ingest that and apply it in a business setting, something that is done across DoD and the government to a degree right now. But STEM talent isn't good enough. And I think this is going to help you get where you want to go, Karen. I didn't think I was going to say this, but now I'm going to say it. You have to have a multidisciplinary approach. A product team is a multidisciplinary approach. You've got lawyers, you got product people, you got sales people, you got engineers and scientists, and then translate that to government. You have contracting officers and logisticians and price cost analysts. But if you don't translate it to government, it's the same concept. I need to have everybody in one room understanding what the application of this is, so I can understand what the effects are. If I don't have all the pieces coming in, then you've got wasted STEM talent. Those folks will come in and they'll go right back out. You need to bring in STEM talent, and then you need to put enablers with them. What's cooler than being an acquisition enabler or an attorney enabler? I've met some of the coolest attorneys. I don't have a high thought of government attorneys after a lot of years working in the government. Until I started meeting some folks. They're out there. There's the Karen Thorntons out there. All right. There's some other folks out there that are fantastic government attorneys. The folks coming out of GW Law, no surprise, little plug there, even though I didn't go to GW Law. But ultimately, I've met some really creative attorneys who come and they say, hey, I'm taking my attorney hat off for a second. Not really, it's there. But I'm going to think about through the product. I'm going to think through the engineering and the sales on this. I'm going to think through, and then I'm going to throw it on and think about regulatory burdens. That is the type of critical thought that an attorney needs, that a contracting officer needs, that a STEM person needs. But these magical STEM people aren't going to come in and save the day. We have to put them in a team with critical thinkers.
Boom. That's my word of the day. Boom. Drop the mic. All right. I wanna turn this over to our crowd soon, Ben, but I want to talk about two of the things that where our worlds are colliding very specifically on the work you're doing with AI Futures and the work I'm doing with the Acquisition Innovation Research Center. Because when we turn this conversation over to our GW friends, I'm really interested in some of the most concrete ideas that they might have. So I organized, I'm a teacher. I tried to organize these questions somewhat logically to lead up to, okay, so now we need a mechanism for creating acquisition enablers. What does that look like? To me and the folks that I am working with, that is the Defense Civilian Training Corps, which the Congress authorized in FY20 NDAA, and then poked a little bit more in last year's NDAA and with some funding, and said, we want to see universities house ROTC-like cohorts, meaning like in my experience as an ROTC cadet, I was part of a group of students from across all sorts of different disciplines. I was poli-sci, I had classmates who are engineers, and we went to class every week and we learned to understand the Defense Department's culture. We learned about how the mission, and we really fell in love with the mission. I'll be 100% honest. I was 18 years old and I found my new family, and we were all very clear on what our roles would be, even as young young lieutenants inside this much bigger system. So the Defense Civilian Training Corps is a civilian version of this, educating on campuses the students, the future civilian workforce, and introducing them not just to the military mission, but to the defense acquisition system and the role that they will play as enablers and the problem solvers and product people, as Ben described it, but also inviting these students to come from the STEM majors as well as business, finance, public policy. And we're launching at 4 universities in the fall: Virginia Tech, Purdue, North Carolina A&T, and University of Arizona. And we are sprinting to our orientation on August 21st at each of these campuses. The students are going to have, it's going to be active learning in the classroom. They are going to get, hands-on experience in understanding what real life problems are, and not just how the system works, because I think it's really important for any of us who just fell into this. When I was at least 6 months into my job at the Corps of Engineers as a procurement lawyer in the headquarters, before my boss said, why don't you go to GW Law School at night and get an LLM? It'll be, his theory was to build an educational or a learning organization. I didn't understand where the FAR fit into the larger legal structure, or what my role was in upholding democratic principles in doing my job as procurement counsel. Too often the question was, well, what does the FAR say? But really the question is, what is our role in fulfilling the public trust as civil servants who are upholding the democratic principles in the Constitution? So we want our undergraduate students to understand that big picture, but as we all know, what they really need to feel empowered and understand is how they can make a difference. And we really want to help these students understand how they can be the hero in their story, right? How they can be the acquisition enabler, dragon slayer, because all of us on this call know that when they join the DoD, because it's a pipeline, so they will be direct hired into the Department of Defense upon graduation with a service commitment, like I had in our OTC. As soon as no matter how well we prepare them to be critical thinkers, and no matter how well their summer internship introduces them to a really cool project, as soon as they enter the system, it's going to try to kill their spirits, right? Because this is the lived experience. But what I want to make sure that these scholars have upon arriving inside the system is a cohort. They'll be learning as a cohort. They will be hired as a cohort, which is how I'm going to be the dragon slayer that undoes USA jobs. I said it here first. And if they have a cohort of peers, I want them to feel the radiating circle of support out from that. And that's us right here. So before we talk very specifically about the us and our roles and your ideas and your concerns, Ben is working on something really cool, which is looking left on this talent pipeline that we're building through Defense Civilian Training Corps. And it's so inspiring. I want you all to hear it from Ben, because he's going to the high schools, he's going to community colleges, he's in the Midwest, he's introducing folks who never have heard of what it means to work for the federal government or what it means to serve your country, and inspiring them with really cool projects. Can you tell us a little bit about that, Ben?
Sure. So, and I will say that my experience is probably like most in that I didn't know that a thing called government contracting existed. It was never on my roadmap. I ended up in government contracting because I live in Detroit. In the 2008, 2009 housing crisis, I did construction litigation. Nobody was building any houses, right? So what did I end up having to do? Landlord tenant evictions, piles of them. That is the most miserable legal work you can ever do. So I was like, I'm out. I'm not doing this type of work. And I had a buddy who worked at Taycom here in Michigan, and he's like, hey, you ever think about government contracting? All you need to know is this FAR thing, and then you can do it. And I'm like, I don't know what that is, but it sounds good. I'll try it, right? So that's how I ended up in government contracting. By the way, the best way, Karen, for Congress to poke is with money. I like that, right? Like, if you're gonna poke me with money, right? That's how you get me moving. Send me some money. So currently I'm affiliated with a group who's running a program out of the DoD CDAO's office, which I mentioned previously. The program is called AI Literacy. It was an appropriation from Senate Appropriations Committee, I believe, as an ad for 1 year to run a program to say, hey, could you build a STEM AI talent pipeline from high school? I don't have any clue what the government is or does through employment. And could you prove that out in a pilot and do it in a really short time frame? And so this contract started in October 1st. And we've been working it ever since. What we've designed through it is ultimately an opportunity to raise awareness on, hey, acquisition careers are a thing. You can be a civilian, you don't have to wear the uniform. You can support DoD as a defense acquisition civilian. It's this acquisition thing that's really cool. And you could be an engineer, or you could be an accountant, or you could be an attorney, and you're still part of this thing called defense acquisition. And so what we do is we've gone as far back as junior high, talking to junior high kids about, hey, there's this cool career thing out there. At the junior high level, you don't tell them about some of the stuff that we normally talk about, health insurance, although I was at a junior high pitch where the Army was pitching health insurance. I'm not sure why. And so you tell them about what's really cool about doing it and what they're interested in. We work them through high school, and then we do a series of hackathons. They are AI hackathons with a little autonomous robot. It has LiDAR and optics, and then the kids have to hack into the code, fix the code, and then navigate a course. They do this all in one day. And then in addition to that, we have continued engagement with the students over our Discord channel, where they actually do little challenges with something called a Pico Pi, which I happen to have here. It's a little computer chip about yay big there, okay? And so students are smart, I've found, as you will find, especially if you have kids. I have some high schooler and a junior high schooler and an elementary school kid. And they were able to take this little guy, and in the matter of a couple days, open somebody's car with it, map overhead traffic, air traffic patterns with it, tune into a radio station with it, and do this all on their own. They're allowed to spend $25 of their own money and use our computer chip. These things only cost $4. And then so within less than $30, they're able to do these amazing things. As they do that, we teach them all about, hey, this is what a career at DARPA would look like. This is what a career at NIWC PAC would look like. And one thing that kids are really interested in is, can I work on cool technology? Can I live where I want and live in cool parts of the world? These are things they're interested in. The things that we used to hear about that were problems for government recruiting. Oh, government can't pay what industry pays, so they'll never get the talent. Kids don't give a crap about that. Kids want cool technology, and they want to live in cool places in the world, and then they want a salary that's close. Okay. I'll tell you what, as an attorney, when I left and went to the government, the Army paid pretty darn well compared to the other organizations around us here. I live right in the center of General Motors, Ford, Chrysler, Delphi. So it's not like there's not competition for those type of fields, but the packages, most of the engineers I see at Taycom have worked for Chrysler, then worked for the government, then worked for GM, then worked for the government. And they kind of switch depending on where automotive is at the time, or where aerospace is at the time. And so ultimately the kids have been very interested. We have had multiple kids go all the way from, and these are high school hackathons we had, or sorry, college hackathons we had earlier this year. We had kids who interviewed on site for a hackathon and were offered internship opportunities with Navy or AFRL or Army. And we actually, Karen, you don't even know this. We actually had our first college student be offered and accepted a job at Naval Surface Warfare Center Crane. They were at our Purdue University hackathon. They got a job offer and they accepted it to be an electrical engineer for Naval Surface Warfare Center Crane. So we've proven within a ridiculously short amount of time, you can get people interested and aware of this thing called defense acquisition as a civilian and get them through the pipeline and prove that it can be done for this AI literacy program. The last thing I'll leave you with is this. Don't worry, contracting nerds. I haven't forgotten about you. I'm a contracting nerd, all right? Engineers don't get to have all the fun. All right, so I know that we're doing this program called AI literacy, and it's all about artificial intelligence. I told you about this ground vehicle and in the coding and the sensors or whatever. The NCMA World Congress Hackathon is a contracting nerd hackathon. All right, it is the same program. What we're doing is we're allowing professionals. We're going to the other end of the spectrum, but we're switching disciplines. And we are having a real problem set. This is a real DoD problem set. The solution that wins at the hackathon will be used in a real procurement that week. All right. So that hackathon is going to be acquisition professionals, probably contracting, cost price analysts, and lawyers. I'm not going to tell you what the challenge is. You have to sign up for it to figure out what the challenge is and participate. But the result of that challenge will be used in a real procurement that week. Again, these type of activities can be across multiple disciplines. They can be all the way from back in junior high. They can be at the college level. They can be at current professionals. But the point is awareness, encouragement, and continuous engagement, and then transition into those careers. Again, our folks may go into engineering for 4 years. They may be at Naval Surface Warfare Crane doing anybody from Crane, by the way? Always interested. If you're from Crane, give me a thumbs up. So Crane does, I don't know if anybody has ever been to Crane, Indiana. All right. I worked for the Army my whole career, but I've been to Crane multiple times. It is a giant naval base that is landlocked in the middle of a bunch of agriculture in nowhere, Indiana. And they do crazy stuff like DoD's microelectronics mission, like DoD's hypersonics mission. They do really cool stuff out there. But they may work at hypersonics, and then they may go work for an aerospace company. They may come back to Army, and then they may go work for General Motors. The point is that you get this talent for when you can use them for what you can use them for, and you keep them growing by going in and out of industry and go. All right, Karen, I talked a whole bunch.
No. I think this is awesome. I think we still have a nice 10, 11, 12 minutes to open up the floor. And I don't know if I have a good way of seeing all the view, or if Jessica has a good way of taking hands. But short of calling out and speaking over each other.
I think you can either put in the chat that you have a question or raise your hand.
All right, brilliant. Yeah, we're ready for you.
I like, hey, Melissa from ATEC, the test community. Oh, the test community, always forgotten. I'm sorry, test community, right? Because there's science and technology, there's engineering, and then people usually say, then there's program management. We love you, test community. We know you're in there.
And we did get a question came in earlier about from Anton, who wants to hear more from Ben on examples in which centers or organizations pump out engineering acquisition docs as opposed to doing the actual science. Anton has never considered that perspective and would like to hear more.
So I will ask a question back first. Anton, what is your current discipline? What's your role?
Uh-oh. Did he
Did
leave?
you lose Anton? Oh, there he is. Okay.
Hey there. I was just in the middle of writing that message, so I decided to send it. But yeah, to paraphrase, Yeah, pretty much, and hello, Karen, and hello, Ben. You probably have seen me kind of lightweight LinkedIn stalking you guys, saying hello here and there. You might be wondering, who is this guy? Well, now that I have the mic, I'll just take 2 seconds to say it. So I have a STEM background. I recently completed a Master's of Data Science back in August, and then previously undergrad was electrical engineering, but then there was some finance sprinkled in there. And I've now started to have ambitions to create a small government, contracting firm, or rather, I should say, providing engineering services. The challenge for me has been, how do I learn this acquisitions thing? And then through LinkedIn, I'm starting to see DCTC, et cetera, and following along with the conversations. I know a lot of these conversations have been about, getting younger folks, you just spoke about all the way back to junior high. And a lot of the conversations about getting folks, into the DoD and federal, and how they can implement change there. My question is actually more from the perspective of, should I go along the path of forming a company? What can someone like me consider from these conversations to be part of that change, or just broadly speaking in general, from all of your guys' experience, what's something you'd tell me or anyone else like me, where to go to learn, what to pay attention to? How does someone starting a company today fit in this conversation?
So I will kick it off as somebody who consults with small companies from time to time. Step one, don't do business with the federal government. What a terrible customer to have. Oh my God, they're the worst. All right. After you've disregarded my information, which you're intent on doing, I understand that.
Yep.
So one thing I would say is use up all the free resources that you have before you pay for consultants. Consultants are expensive because we're amazing and we're worth it. But before you work with consultants, use up every last bit of federally sponsored, federally funded resources that are available to you, including free webinars through groups like this, including all the Apex accelerators. I still have to remember that they're Apex accelerators, formerly the Procurement Technical Assistance Centers. All right. That is a DLA program, or at least it was a DLA program, in which the federal government and then a state government co-funded an organization to help small businesses understand this contracting stuff, in addition to other stuff. And then your state would usually have a small business development center, SBDC, which would be affiliated with them to help you with your normal business plan and that kind of stuff. Before you pay for any consultants, please go find your local Apex accelerator, again, federally funded program, and use every resource that they have. And they have lots, okay? And you use those folks up. And then after that, then use a consultant for contracting stuff. You concentrate on doing what your business does, and don't try to become a GovCon expert. There's tons of great people out there. There's tons of great people. I'm seeing some names on this call of some great people I know. So there's other people out there that can help you with that.
Okay, yeah, thank you for that. And I feel good with your response, because actually, yeah, I'm already involved. I've already had a couple counseling sessions with the Apex Accelerator, and I had actually been in touch with them even before they were Apex. Since last year, they were still PTAC.
Perfect.
So I'm already doing that, and SBDC and all those type of things, and attending NCMA webinars, and then webinars such as this.
Perfect.
So I feel good with everything you just said, because it sounds like I'm doing what you'd recommend. Maybe let me get a little more specific to this webinar. As for, obviously, this is GW Acquisitions Law School. I've been toying with the idea of, what would someone like me benefit, I suppose, from, these non-attorney style masters in laws degrees. I mean, is this going to teach me, how to write proposals? Or I'm not exactly 100% clear on, what's the difference of Anton today versus 24 months or whatever when he gets out, still trying to engage in that business, but what extra skills am I going to have? What's the leg up?
Karen, do you want to take this since you created the whole program, and I can follow up?
Yeah, I mean, I think from my perspective, and I had this experience in the LLM program, but the courses are all the same. It is an incredible learning community. You will never find the same level of instruction from faculty who are practitioners, authors, thought leaders in the real sense of the word. Your classmates will become your advocates for and present you with opportunities to have that kind of career with flow, as Ben described it, introducing you to opportunities that you never would have otherwise realized existed. And you'll gain the confidence that comes from that competence that you increase in the classroom through skills development. Our courses are all organized around really developing your ability to communicate, and analyze. The negotiations class is very much hands-on. You can compete in competitions just like law students, and it will really, to my fundamental goal for the program was to make sure that acquisition professionals never felt in any way that their education was inferior to that of the lawyers whose job it was to to advise them and represent them in a legal proceeding. Because we all speak the same language, we all are equally capable in doing the analysis if we come from the same kind of classroom environment.
So,
Thanks. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
oh, no, I was just going to jump in and add, notably, we have a lot of current students and alumni on this call right now, who, based on the fact that they're not throwing tomatoes at the screen or shouting expletives, I think all really had a great experience in the program. I shared a link from one of our recent grads, Corey Richards, who wrote an article for Army AT&L about her experience and how she benefited from it. But I think, as Karen noted, one of the things we hear time and time again from students is not only, even as much as they understood government procurement and government procurement law in general before they came in, they didn't realize how little they knew in the vast universe. But at GW, we like to say, in a lot of the trainings you'll do for DAU or FAI, you'll learn the how, but in our program, you learn the why. And, ultimately our goal is to train future leaders in the acquisition workforce. The goal is to get you thinking analytically and thinking about the big picture and how everything fits together, because we know that you'll be creating policies as you go forward in your careers. And so I think there's a lot of benefit, and there's been a lot, and we can always put you in touch with students that are alumni of the program. I'd encourage folks to click on the link, and I can reach out to you and give you information and meet with you one-on-one about the program. But the last thing I would mention is, beyond the community of the folks you're seeing on this phone call, we're the leading program in the world, which means that we have our tentacles into all aspects of the community. So I always tell students, your part of it is coming in and the knowledge, but the other part is you are coming into a massive network of people who are, I always say it's a cult, but in a friendly sense of the term cult,
Okay.
super enthusiastic about the program and always happy to help out a student with, in general, your studies and your career.
Yeah, no, you touched on a couple things, and I'll let someone else take the floor in a second. The last two you touched on, you mentioned DAU. I just managed to get access to DAU, and I guess I can follow up with you on articulation agreements between what classes I could take there. I signed up because they're free. I was like, if I can get in and take free classes, this is great, and then transfer them. So that was an idea that I'm pursuing. And then between GW and, I know UMGC has a acquisitions, masters. So that's one topic. And really the last thing I want to ask, though, is that I've been struggling with is, okay, I can do this non-lawyer version. Is there any reason I want to go the lawyer route versus the non-lawyer route? That's I think one of the largest questions on my mind.
I think Ben McMartin gave a really great argument for not becoming a lawyer.
Okay.
Karen
Um,
says as a lawyer.
Do follow up. I'm really conscious of the time and how much people have put aside for, for the hour to be with us, because there is no harder working group of people than our acquisition field. And so I want to applaud you for what you do, and for when it is difficult in your organization to get the credit that you deserve. And when it is, even I'm working right now on a side project with one of my former students, Isaac, who is, a grad of the program, but feels like he has a story to tell about the mental health struggles of folks in our field, because we're always at the bottom of the sliding scale of go faster, do more. So, maybe that'll be the next time I ask to come back to talk to the folks in our community about how we take care of each other. But I want to thank Ben for always inspiring me to do my best for creating this future workforce, and help pull up those who are curious, and especially those who want to serve in federal government, because I think there's no better way to find fulfillment in your career. So thanks everyone who joined us. My LinkedIn is wide open and out there. I put my Stevens email in the chat. Please stay in touch. Thank you, Ben. Last words. Don't go to law school.
My last words will be this for an acquisition community. The objective of acquisition is to acquire something to put capability in the hands of somebody. When it's DoD, it's the warfighter. When it's a civilian agency or a private business, it's the customer or end user. And so regardless of what discipline you come to the job with, the objective is clear. Acquire, add capability somewhere down the chain, and just keep that in mind when you're doing that job. Your point is to apply your skills against that objective. If you do that, you'll have a great career.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everybody. Good luck with everything. Take care.
Thank you.